Hello, everybody. Ooh, it works. So everyone, we want to get started. So this is not a city council meeting. It is a community meeting. However, we do have, I see at least 2 council members gracing us with their presence. Councilmember Davis, or I should say Vice Mayor Davis. And Councilmember Martinez are here. And I see, I think, a couple of planning commissioners as well, and finance committee members, so, and just people who just like to make trouble. So anyway, I do have a short presentation. I'm going to try to go through it as quickly as possible. And looking at who's in this room, some of this will be information that many of you already have. So I will try to kind of go through that kind of what I call Emeryville 101 fairly quickly, because there are some people who may not know it. And also, this presentation is being televised right now, so it's going on ETV. And it will also be put on our city YouTube channel as well after this meeting, and will be rebroadcast on ETV. So we won't be doing it in our streaming video, because I would normally be sitting there doing that, but it will be on our YouTube. So if you don't have ETV, if you don't have channel cable TV, you will be able to see it through your computer. I also have a couple of copies of the presentation if people really have a burning desire to take them home. But if you didn't get one today and you wanted one, I'll be more than happy to send you one. Okay, let me start. And excuse me for having my don't know if I can do this without my back being to you, so I apologize for that. I'll try to cheat a little bit. Okay, so the main thing we're here to discuss today is to give some background on the Emeryville shuttle, to explain some of its history, some of its origins, its funding, what some of the challenges are around funding, and the steps that the city is working with to be able to meet those challenges with your support. So this is what I call Emeryville 101. So the Emeryville shuttle is a no-charge-to-rider service that connects the city to the MacArthur-Bart, as well as provides connectivity within Emeryville, and also connects to the West Berkeley shuttle. It's considered one of the most successful last-mile shuttles in California, and that last mile really is a term that's used for kind of between like a major transit type, such as like BART, to your final destination. So it gives you to that door, so to speak. Last year, we had just under 1.7 million boardings, which is amazing. I think it makes us something like the 6th. If we were a transit, if Emeryville was a transit system, it would be like the 6th largest transit system in Northern California. And it's less than $2 per boarding, including all overhead cost, which makes it the most efficient bus system in Northern California as well. And because this has come up, the drivers are unionized. They are members of the Teamsters. The Emeryville is currently funded primarily through a citywide property-based business improvement district called a PBID, which is a special assessment district levy. A little bit more about that later. There's also some direct build parcels through project conditions of approval or developer agreements. So for example, the East Bay Bridge Shopping Center, some of those parcels are in Emeryville, and so those are in the PBID itself. Some of those parcels are actually in Oakland, but because they're part of the joint powers agreement with Oakland that created that shopping center, they provide money into the shuttle on a direct pay basis. The Emeryville also, kind of outside of the PBID, has some service contracts. They operate the West Berkeley shuttle, and they also operate the city's 8-to-go paratransit shuttle. And those are by contract and are fully funded, those costs. They're not something that the PBID is paying for. And there's some miscellaneous revenue that's not very much, bus ads, that kind of thing. So this is just a copy of where it goes and the different routes. As you can see, it does run pretty much everywhere in the city, with the exception of the Triangle, which is served by the 72 and the 40th and San Pablo type transfers, and goes to MacArthur BART station, as well as to the Berkeley Bowl. The current organization is the city provides oversight and approves the budget and the levy every year based upon the recommendation of the Transportation Management Association that actually operates the shuttle, and that symbolizes the board of directors. Then they, in turn, have hired a professional transportation management company, Gray Bowen, to administer the shuttle, and the operator is MV Transportation that actually provides the drivers and operates the system. Governance. So the TMA in this, because of the funding, which we'll get a little bit more into what an assessment district is, the TMA, under the law that undergirds the funding for the shuttle, acts as what's called the owner's representative. And under PBID law, they are the official administrator. They have primary responsibility to, one, they recommend every year what the levy should be. The council adopts the levy, but the council could only do less than, can't do more than what they recommend, and cannot either terminate the shuttle or the PBID without the property owner's consent. The TMA board, under the current PBID management plan, is the governing body of the TMA, and are subject by the bylaws of the TMA, which are voted upon by the membership. It is the TMA's response. The city must contract with the TMA, and the TMA has the ability to determine the shuttle service levels, routes, and stops, and develop the budget. The city's role really is pretty much limited to general oversight. The city receives the budget every year and pretty much is just looking to see that the budget is sound, that there's revenue is based upon the revenue that is available, and must, according to the law, contract with the TMA to provide the services, and has really limited decision-making responsibilities. Origins. I'm going to go through this really quickly. The Emeryville shuttle began as a public-private partnership in 1994, which is pretty amazing to me that that was 21 years ago. And at the time, it was a very small service. It really was meant to be at the time, there was a lot of independent shuttles kind of running around, and the city was just beginning to grow. And the thought was, rather than having all these independent shuttles, why don't we see if we can get all the business community to agree to kind of pool resources and have one shuttle. And we would augment that by beginning to put conditions of approval on development. So it really started off mostly as a way to be more efficient in how the city is looking at mitigations for businesses. That was the start. But a mitigation-based funding really is based upon mitigating the trips produced from that project, not providing a service citywide. And as you will see, the shuttle began changing very quickly. By the way, when we started it, we said that success would be if within a year the shuttle had 40% more ridership than all the independent shuttles did together. They made that benchmark the first week. So then the next kind of phase was when the TMA was established. Actually, the first few years of the shuttle, the city did operate the bus directly and provided at first about 60% of the funds, and then by the end of the third year was paying about 10% of the funds through the general fund. The TMA was established, and the deal with the developers was that after 3 years the city would kind of spin it off. The business community would govern the shuttle and pay for the shuttle, and that was pretty much true, with the city putting about 10% of the funding in, and the city no longer operated the shuttle, but did send a liaison to the board with no voting rights. And this was the beginning of a great expansion in ridership. Hence, 2001, the formation of the PBID. And this really was a recognition that the previous funding mechanism was no longer adequate. It's gone way beyond it being kind of something as a mitigation for the ridership of the new development. It was something that increasingly everyone in the city was using very heavily. And certainly the entire business community, but increasingly also the residential community as well. So the first P-bid was commercial businesses only. All residential use properties were exempt. And that was pretty much the first one. The first renewal was in 2006, and this one was for 10 years. And for this one, the law changed, and so rental housing was included, except for in residentially zoned areas, on the basis that rental housing is really, it's a business. You know, you do have a business license. You're in the business of providing housing. So it was considered a commercial use, and so on that basis, rental housing was included, but homeowning was not, unless it was through a condition of approval. So some of the newer condominiums in the city do pay, not through the P-bid, but because of conditions of approval. And this current P-bid is for 10 years. So exactly what is a P-bid? It's a special assessment district. It is a levy determined by the special benefit received by the assessed property owners, which could vary according to land use or service proximity. It's collected through the property tax rolls. It requires a Prop 218 ballot process followed by a city council action to adopt. The ballot itself must include a summary with the full management plan available. That includes everything from the services being proposed to governance to the proposed assessment formula. And that Prop 218 vote is a protest vote by mail, as we've done in the past, and ballots are sent to every parcel owner that would be subject to the P-bid. So the first time that was purely commercial, non-housing of any type. Second time was commercial businesses plus commercial housing. And the ballots are weighted according to the proposed assessment levy. Under Prop 218, it is felt that the more you pay, the more say you should have in the vote. However, while the council can only take action if there's not a majority protest, which means that if 50% plus one of the ballots returned based upon the weight of the assessment say no, then it stops. If you don't get that protest vote, it's based upon who returns the ballot, not the universe of ballots, then the council may take action to approve the district, but does not have to. And I would say that this is somewhat of protection against what you call the minority shareholders, in that the council has the ability to kind of weigh in after a public hearing and takes action after that. And so the council may approve or disapprove the proposed P-bid once the Prop 218 ballot process has been completed and there's been no majority protest. If there is a majority protest, everything stops and the council could not approve the P-bid. So the current P-bid assessment levy is a little over 26, is placed on the structural square foot of non-housing commercial parcels. And so for office retail, that's just over 26 cents per structural square foot. For industrial or warehouse, currently it's 13 cents, 13 cents or half of what the office retail pays. And for residential housing, it is just under $131 per unit per year. And for those condos who, really it's on the homeowners association that pays as part of the conditions of approval, they pay the same $130.89. So at this point, there is a structural deficit in the Emery-Round shuttle. Demand has outstripped the revenue that's being generated right now. Partly it's because that when you have a new project coming online, it does put money into the P-bid. It may not also be enough if that additional ridership requires new buses, right? So it pretty much does cover the operating cost, the incremental operating cost, but it doesn't necessarily then pay for if you need to really expand service. So over time, there's been a bit of a budget deficit. Normally, the PBID has always been slightly under budget, so it's not really grown a lot. But at this point, it's about a $400,000 deficit. And the way that it's being bridged right now is that the TMA does have some cash reserves that they really have set aside for purchasing buses, but they have been drawing down upon that, which then of course then begs the question, where's your capital for buses? And also the city council agreed for this current budget cycle of 15-16 and 16-17 to allocate $400,000 in total for the Emeryville. So between what the TMA has in reserves and this money from the city, the service is just about breaking even. But that's not sustainable because costs continue to go up, and that bridge obviously is only for a short period of time. This is one-time money. Give you a sense, because this has come up, but who contributes what to the Emeryville? So if you look at it, retail office uses pay the lion's share. Just under 80% of the entire system is paid through office retail uses. Industrial warehouse parcels is the next biggest bite with a little over 10% of the budget. And the residents who pay would be in two categories, I would say. One is through rent. If you are a renter, you probably are getting some type of pass-through. And the rental apartments make up about 5.6% of the revenue of the system. And the PBID residential parcel are the condos that have the conditions of approval. And you can see that that is less than 1%. This is based upon 2013 data. I didn't have it yet for 2014, but it's approximately the same. It wouldn't have changed the percentages. So as I said, historically, costs have exceeded revenue, primarily due to increases in fuel, maintenance costs, aging fleet, replacing the fleet, and just increased ridership. It's interesting that even during the recession, while many transit systems had a decrease in ridership, the Emeryville stayed the same. And what we've seen is that the percentage of Emeryville residents and workers who use transit is growing, while the overall trend is declining. So even with no more growth, there is likely to be more ridership as people realize that in Emeryville it's not as necessary to maybe even own a car. Between your bike and your transit and then having access to car share, you may not own a car at all. So this is just a little bit more budget information. We are in service year 2015. There's a little bit of administrative cost. These are just direct costs running the shuttle. There's about $70,000 a year more, primarily for paying the county for collecting the fee. But you can see that even with a status quo budget, not looking at ridership, we've got Park on Powell, there's quite a few developments about to happen. And not to mention this continued shift in mode of residents not taking their cars, that we are looking at a larger, demand for service. So the current PBID sunsets after fiscal year 15-16, which would mean that the current funding for the PBID is enough to provide service through December 31st, 2016. And with the money that the city has set aside, that's probably enough to keep it at the current level. But for those of you who ride the shuttle, you already know there's a lot of buses that are standing room only. And so the PBID is up for renewal, and the reason to do it this year as opposed to next year is because of that structural deficit and the need, and to look at the cost of the shuttle and how are we going to fund it. And I'll just say that in addition to the P-bid, the city is also working with the Alameda County Transportation Commission. We'll also be looking at Metropolitan Transportation Commission to look at grant funding, particularly for purchasing buses and potentially for paying for that part of the shuttle system that a P-bid may not. One of the things about a P-bid is that it is based upon the parcel owner receiving a special benefit. Well, there's a certain amount of the shuttle that you can't really assign to any special benefit. And so, for example, there are 90 people a day who take the Emeryville shuttle from MacArthur BART and get off at 40th and San Pablo Avenue and take AC Transit then to places not in the city. So that you can assign as a special benefit to either a business or a resident. It's not a resident taking it. They're not going to a business in Emeryville. They're just enjoying the system. Well, that's not something that an assessment district can pay for. It can only pay for the special benefit accruing to the payee. So that would be something that, and that restriction has, when we originally did the P-bid, that was not as big of an issue, but there have been some court cases now that have said that you really do have to determine what general benefit there may be, and those costs have to be taken out of the P-bid. So this would be something that could be covered either through the city's general fund or potentially through grants. And that's one of the discussions that we are having. Yes?
Karen, but if it was a citywide P-bid that included all properties,
Yes.
then how would you determine what the special benefit was?
Well, there's two things. Well, one, you figure out what's the general benefit. Like, those rides that aren't starting in Emeryville, aren't ending in Emeryville, clearly are not a special benefit to anyone who owns a parcel in Emeryville. Yes?
Can you repeat the question? Because I
Oh, I'm sorry. It's like, how do you determine the special benefit if it's a citywide? We have the assessment engineer here who can probably answer that in more detail if you need to, but essentially it's on access to the service and what benefit do you derive from that access. So land use can make a difference. So one of the things that's being looked at is the division now in which office and retail and other commercial uses are all lumped into one. Is that really an equitable assessment of the special benefit? When there's differences, a business may not have that much use for it doesn't really need the access on the weekends, but a retail does, right? So and residents do also, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Especially weekends.
Actually, you'd be surprised at the residents that use it during the weekday. But anyway, but those are the kinds of,
I use it during the weekday, for sure.
yeah.
But I'm saying there's times that I would use it on a weekend that it doesn't come anywhere near where I am. And it doesn't complete a route that we
Karen?
need.
I can hear the audience members.
Oh, okay.
so
I should have,
have them come up.
that was great, thank you. Essentially, that is something that the assessment engineer will determine, and maybe at the end, if there's still a couple of questions that are very specific, we can have Tim answer it, but just to kind of get through the whole presentation. But essentially, the assessment engineer, that's what they do, that they look at everything from chip generation. There's like a whole lot of things that they look at to determine what the special benefit is. And I know that for this P-bid coming up, they're looking at fine-graining it a little bit more than it is now. Okay. So, as I said, that so the P-bid that is under discussion right now is expected to include residents, and the council will be making the first step toward that at the March 17th meeting. And the residential households would be included based upon the assessment engineer's finding that residential parcels receive a similar benefit as commercial properties. It's going to be looked at in detail to see what that benefit is. The fact that you have access to a service, unlike, let's say, a resident, let's say in Berkeley, that does not have access to a service that provides that last mile. It would also help address the budget shortfall. This is really back of the envelope because we don't have the final budget yet, and we don't know what the assessment engineer, how they were going to kind of determine what the correct percentage, who should be paying what amount. But kind of based upon what's being paid now by the rental housing, we are assuming that residents would probably generate about another $250,000 to $400,000 a year, and that's just very ballpark. Because I don't know yet how that's going to be determined specifically. It would address the equity issues between those that rent and those that own housing in this city, and would address that condominiums that are rented out really are commercial housing. You are supposed to have a business license if you rent out your condo, but the way it is now, it's very difficult to determine who's being what the condos that are being rented out versus that aren't. And administratively, we just haven't pursued that, and so it would kind of eliminate that as a loophole. And it would also provide for residential representation in decision making, which currently is very limited. There is a position on the TMA board for a representative of one of the residential properties that pay through direct bill, through conditions of approval, but that position has been vacant for some time because there's only about 4 or 5 properties that are eligible and no one's been wanting to serve. And so that would have been kind of a residential representative. So obviously, if residents are included in the PBID, residents will need to be included somehow in the governance and have a say or representation in the decisions. So this is my last slide. And so this is kind of the basic schedule that we're operating under. March 17th will be the first reading of an ordinance that would set up on a local level the parameters for a PBID, which would include, for example, that residents could be assessed, but just like any parcel owners, just like any assessment district, this ordinance does not establish anything other than kind of the ground rules. It still would have to have an assessment engineer determine what the formula should be, what the special benefit is. A management plan still has to be developed that includes governance, and that plan still has to be voted upon by all the parcel owners. And so you can kind of see those dates in terms of when that would be expected to happen. And so May 9th, the study session. By that time, there should be a draft management plan, so people could see kind of more specifically what the proposal is, what the assessment formula is, kind of special benefit, and who's being asked to pay what. And then June 5th would be the date that we're expecting to be able to actually mail the ballots, and those ballots would be mailed to every parcel owner that would be subject to the PBID. Those would be due back on July 20th, and then the next day we would count the ballots and then there's a public hearing, and we count the ballots in public. And in fact, I'm trying to think if there's anyone here who was there. We were counting the ballots last time. I don't see anyone, but yes, Andy, you were there when we've counted the ballots for the PBID before. And so we do count, so the public is invited to see us count the ballots. And then after that, there's a public hearing. And you can bring in your ballot anytime until the public hearing starts. And then there's more opportunity to say what you want, for, against, or neutral. And only after that can the City Council decide to take action, either to approve or disapprove. And this is assuming that the Prop 218 ballot process was in the affirmative. And if that was to happen on August 10th, the PBID assessment would be placed on the property rolls for 15/16. So that's the timeline by which we are going by right now. Any questions?
Thank you. David Sherman. I live in the Watergate condominiums. So that I am clear, The Prop 218 ballot process beginning on June 5th would include future parcels affected by this decision, which would be if the condos were included, I would be getting a ballot.
Yes.
Okay, second question goes to the assessment itself would be for property, on the property rolls as of this fiscal year, beginning 15 to 16, even though the current P-bid runs out on the 16th. So why a
Wouldn't
year?
be paying both. I mean, like, in other words, you wouldn't be layering one on top of the other.
Okay, can you give a little more?
Oh, okay.
Explain a little bit more clearly about how, if this thing passes
Yes,
and the assessment is put onto our properties,
yes.
that would be a payment that would be due this year.
Yes, I think the property taxes come out in December and April, I think?
No, they're due in December and they're due in April. They come out in November, so
Yes.
that's,
So it's for the tax, it's for the bill that comes out in November.
and this is a year ahead of when the current P-bid
Yes.
expires.
Yes.
So the old one would not be.
The old one would go away, essentially be replaced by the new one. You wouldn't be, both would not be assessed. Only the new P-bid would supplant the old
All right, so this
P-bid.
would obsolete the previous P-bid.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Joyce had,
That's all right, I see the date I was looking for.
Finley Robbins, I'm also a Watergate resident. So would the only time to give feedback on some of these proposals, the only time would be at that public hearing, not during the March 17th or April 7th reading of the ordinance?
There is opportunity to give feedback at all those opportunities. So in terms of the city council being present, they would be present on March 17th. They would be present on April 7th. They would be present on May 9th. And the public hearing on July 21st. In addition to those opportunities to comment at the city council meeting, there's being planned, and I probably should have put that on this slide, that there'll be kind of staff going out, talking to residents, kind of doing maybe shortened versions of this at various homeowners association or at the various housing projects, also talking one-on-one to businesses that have some questions as well. So that process will be going on at the same time. What I really put up here was kind of like the official dates of action, but yes, absolutely, not only are those kind of formal opportunities for public comment, but there will be opportunities, in terms of staff members coming in and talking about the process. And as we know, as the management plan becomes drafted, there'll be more information, because I can't tell you specifically right now what someone from Watergate, what the fee might be, because one, we don't have the budget, and two, the assessment engineer hasn't completed the work to determine what the special assessment formula should be.
If it is something approximately the $131 per unit, that would be about $164,000 generated. No, it's 1,247 units times 131, which is what I was
The
doing.
whole city.
Oh, no. So Watergate would be
That's not
pretty,
considering Pacific Park Plaza.
correct, just Watergate. So you mentioned kind of an outreach to the community.
Yes.
When would that start taking place? And
I would say as soon as we have a little bit more detail to say. Right now, I would hate to go to Watergate and not to give you a range of what I think the assessment is going to be. What would be the point? And so I'm expecting to have that. Maybe, Tim, you can speak.
Did you want me to?
Yeah, if you want to just maybe kind of talk about the process a little bit that you go through and how long that's likely to take.
Yeah, Karen did a great summary, so I don't have
Let
a,
me just introduce. This is Tim Seufert with NBS Local Government Solutions, and his firm is acting as the assessment engineer for the P-bid and has done so for the last P-bids as well.
Hi, yeah, I'm Tim Seufert, so NBS, and I live just across the bay in San Francisco, and have been doing these types of assessment districts for many years, have done a bunch in San Francisco recently, and from National City down south up to, you know, Sacramento and all places in between. So this is really what we do. Assessment districts have been around for about 150 years in California. They used to be really simple. You could get away with a lot of, you know, quick and dirty, if you want to call it that. They've become much more difficult, and now they have to be much more you know, objective analyses based on a lot of data. So instead of a little thin report, they're becoming much thicker, and they're taking more time. But I think the good thing about that is that they're, you know, they're becoming more precise and looking at all the various components. And part of this discussion then is to bring the residential part really fully fledged in as a member, if you will, of this PBID. And so looking at the PBID, we look at who would benefit, and as we saw the route maps and what have you, pretty much every parcel in the city is going to have some benefit. The radius of I believe it's half a mile, right, from a stop, pretty much covers the whole town. So when you look at that and you start assessing the properties, you've got to come up with a formula that makes sense. And the benefit here is really access to the Emery go-round. Whether or not you choose to use it or not is, you know, as an individual choice. Obviously, you could decide you only want to ride your bike and you never want to use it, but you could use it 5 times a day, right? But the benefit is the access, whether, you know, you're a condominium or you're, you know, Pixar across the street or whoever, you have, you know, the benefit. So we're looking at using like trip generation statistics to fine grain, as Karen called it. So we don't just have like 26 cents and 13 cents. You know, there'll be more fine grain between the categories of use so that it's more of a precise calculation and something that has to withstand scrutiny. You know, years ago, the deference was to the city council and their findings, and if the city council made certain findings, the courts pretty much backed off. Well, since Prop 218 was a constitutional amendment, the courts are basically looking over the shoulder of every city council or county board or special district board. So the record, the administrative record, has to be very thick, right? And we document pretty much, you know, every time we blink almost with these things. So at the end of the day, very soon we're going to have numbers that we can share with you. You know, it's a completely transparent process. And really the outreach, in my mind, really starts tonight and kind of, you know, getting everybody weighing in. We're having another meeting, Saturday the 21st, and then more information. We'll send out some written information so that everybody's really informed, so that when you get the ballot, you know, you can say, you know, yes or no. You know, at the end of the day, it's going to be the Emeryville community that decides. Yes.
Sorry, but not sorry. As being an assessor on this, I've asked this question before, but I have another idea about it. So I've always suggested charging the riders a minimal amount of money. 1.7 million people, if you charge them $1, be 1.7 million, or even 50 cents would almost be $1 million. And I know the response I've gotten is it's cost prohibitive. But have you actually assessed how much it would cost to outfit buses, train the operators, do whatever needs to be done? Because as ridership goes up, as this becomes something that's always going to be, perhaps that becomes cost effective. I know personally, I've never ridden the Emery go-round, and I don't know if I'm going to ever ride it. So for me to pay into it, I'm not getting any benefit. And I don't know how you take that into consideration, but why not look at the cost of outfitting?
Well, I would say that that's not what an assessment engineer assesses. I mean, that really is a policy decision on whether or not riders are charged. And yes, Oh, and so what I would say is that that really is a policy decision. At this point, it's the TMA board that makes that policy decision. I would say that when that has come up to the council level, it's been something that we said, well, that's a policy decision of the TMA board. But I would say it's not so much the cost of putting the equipment in, it's the fact that last mile service, just does not work as much if you have to pay a fare. That if you may have taken a bus to get to BART, and then you have the BART fare. If you then also have to to pay another fare to get from BART to where you're trying to go, that's enough for people to say, I'm just going to get in my car. So a lot of it is a policy to promote taking transit. And, that's why, I know used to be, maybe still is in Seattle, that some of the buses, it's like free going into the city and they only charge you going out. It's the same kind of thing. It really is, the more fares you have to pay, it's an issue with transfers, right? The more you have to pay, the less likely you're going to take it. And if you look at 1.7 trips per year added to these streets, that's almost 6,000 trips per day added to these streets. That's a benefit. Yes.
I thought one of the issues.
I thought one of the issues about paying was that the businesses are already paying for their employees, and therefore their employees would have to pay twice.
And that would go for every parcel owner that was in the assessment district, that you would be paying twice.
The other thing that I've heard is that it really slows down the service. So then you need more drivers and you need more buses. There are a whole
People
series.
are digging for the
This has come up a
quarters. They're
number of
digging for the
times.
quarters. Yeah.
There's like a whole series of reasons why they decided against it.
She's been, I think, out in the back there. Yeah, did you have
I might have missed this, but I'm wondering, since we theoretically would be paying for this, would this enable the opportunity to maybe go to West Oakland BART, like a lot of residents have requested? If we're paying for it, do we weigh into that decision-making process? Also, I wanted to know about the recently passed transfer tax. Is that going to provide any relief to this, theoretically? It's supposed to pay for infrastructure projects?
I'm going to have to put those to you guys. More operational questions than...
So I'll take the second one first. So on the transfer tax that the voters passed in November to now collect $12 for every 1,000 of property sales in the town, took effect in January, and we're in the process now of working through the budget amendment that we're going to be bringing to the council. Whether or not that provides some relief specifically to the Emery go-round is going to be up to the council. I will share with you, as part of the work that the assessment engineer is doing, he's coming up with, obviously the specific benefit calculation, but then also alongside that, as Karen mentioned, the general benefit. Well, the general benefit, the city is going to have to come up with some funding source for that. Order of magnitude, we're probably talking, another 300,000, 400,000. We'll see where it all lands. So would the transfer tax be a potential source for that? Yes, but that's going to be up to the council on kind of how they would want to cover it. But there will be a new line item that the council is going to have to cover ongoing for this to cover the general benefit. On the West Oakland piece, that is a much bigger policy question. It's not something that specifically Tim is taking into account as part of his assessment, but we'll kind of see where the council direction goes on this. And there are some legal concerns that I believe the city attorney has on that, but I don't really want to speak to them. Not qualified to do that.
Yeah, and also it would certainly also be a budget. Right now, the current budget does not include it, and the cost of running service all the way to the West Oakland BART would have to, would obviously be an increase to the budget that would then raise the cost overall to the payers into the system.
Thank you. I have two questions, one for Karen and one for Tim. The first question to Karen is the PBID assessment. How long does it last? Because the last one was for 10 years. Are we talking about a 20-year assessment of PBID?
I think the ordinance that is being proposed to council would permit it to be as long as 15.
15 years, that's the max.
That would be the max.
The max under the, okay, and that relates to the second question, because for several years I was on the Emeryville go-round board, and I think the go-round's great. But one of the things that worries me about this P-bid is that there were a lot of hidden costs which sort of were alluded to, and that's the capital expenditures which are going to be needed for new buses. And I think the other one that is a major issue is finding a new home for it. And when I left the board a year and a half ago, we were talking about buying a place in Oakland from Caltrans, and that is going to be a expensive proposition. I'm just throwing numbers out that I remember, but it's like a $4 to $6 million cost. So if this thing is a long-term plan, I'm looking at probably an extra couple of $1 million a year in costs that need to be funded if we're going to continue with just the P-bid system. So my question to you, Tim, is did you include any of these necessary capital improvements, buses, new building, in your...
What he's included to date is the budget that's been adopted by the TMA board, which does have some replacement of some of the buses that are really aged out, falling apart, but not necessarily, but I would say they're not replacing them with their preferred type of bus. You know, it's like you buy cheaper and replace faster. When it's kind of like anyone does, that you can buy like the used car that can get you 3 more years, or you can buy the new car that can get you 15 years. And sometimes that decision is based upon your budget, not because of maybe what's the better thing to have done. So not all of that's considered. Having said that, is that this is where particularly city staff is focusing our time in talking to our regional transportation agencies. The city council has included finding grant money that could be used for either bus yard acquisition or rolling stock as part of the lobbying efforts of Towson Associates, who they go up to this. They've been quite successful in getting other types of grants for the city. And so we see that those are the most fundable parts of the Emery-go-round, as either the bus yard, rolling stock, or potentially this general benefit piece of the service. And we've already started having those conversations. Okay, over here.
We start in the front row.
Thank you.
I suspect that Sabrina's tired of hearing me ask this question, but it goes right in with what Karen was just saying. Are we doing any good at tapping into county funding for shuttles? How are we doing in that department? This would take, along the line of Rob's comment, this would take pressure off the city for funding.
Right now, they are planning on probably having a call for grants in June, and they have been very interested in learning as much about the shuttle as possible. So we do believe that when the criteria are coming out for funding, that we'll be very well positioned to get a good chunk of what will be made available to shuttles.
And just to follow up quickly on that, and that's probably what I'm guessing the two of you want to talk about too. The word shuttle was included in the recent Measure BB that just passed in November through the efforts of Emeryville. We were able to get that in there as something that is eligible to be funded, but it does not mean that there is any guarantee that there's going to be funding for that. So there is a lot of staff work that's going into really pushing for the next 5-year call that there would be something that would go out for shuttles, and that the Emery go-round would specifically be eligible. Alongside that, we are working, as Karen mentioned, with our lobbyists, both at the federal level and at the state level, to really get out there and tell our story and try to come up with some other funding that we can get. It's going to be much more likely, as she mentioned, to get it for capital funding than for operational.
So it just seems to me that if you are going to have to sell this idea to the residents, that you will really be wanting to put some more benefits for the residents into the proposal. Have you thought about that? Have you thought about, as Robin said, the weekend coverage, different times of day, et cetera, so that you do get buy-in from the resident?
So just to be clear, as the assessment engineer, we're the objective sort of third party that's coming in, like your auditor, and we're looking at what's being proposed and assessing it to the properties within the community. So questions on what's in it for residents and should the shuttle go 24 hours a day or 12 hours a day or whatever it is, are not something that we're looking at. I'm not trying to say that's not my job, but it's not my job. I mean, certainly the TMA.
Yeah, maybe one way to start with saying is that I have had a draft. There was a ridership survey in January, and I've only seen the first draft of the results. I haven't seen the final results. We're still going back and forth because you can slice and dice data several different ways, and there's a couple of ways that I want them to slice and dice it. They haven't done so yet, so I don't have a final product. But about 32% of all rides, either weekday or weekend, slightly more on the weekend, slightly less on the weekday, is residents riding the buses now. Now, many of those rides, of course, are going to work or going to other businesses, so it's a joint special benefit. It's not solely a residential benefit. But that's something that really has changed from when the system started, when there were very few residents riding the buses. Partly that we have a lot more residents who also work in the city, but also this is a city now that between your bike, walking, and the Emeryville, more and more residents, or even just not having cars, or it's easier to jump on the bus than it is to hop in your car and do cross-town travel. I know if I live a couple blocks away from the West Berkeley Bowl, and believe you me, if that shuttle was the West Berkeley Bowl on the weekends, I would be shopping in Emeryville a lot more, just so I'm not driving, a mile and spending half an hour to drive that mile and find parking.
I wanted to understand better the concept of separating out the general benefit. It seems to me that and I think you kind of alluded to this too, that if the benefit to the properties in the P-bid is the availability of the service, then it doesn't really matter who the rider is or how they're using it. For example, I sort of use the Emeryville in kind of unorthodox ways. I use it to get halfway to Piedmont Avenue and walk up to Piedmont or something. So if my next door neighbor made that trip to go shop in the city of Oakland, that doesn't have any more or less value to me than someone taking BART in and then taking the Emery around to catch the 72, for example.
So, do you want kind of just a quick response to that, or?
Sure.
So in general, again, what we're trying to do is come up with an objective model that makes sense, right? I mean, we can't predict, obviously, everybody's use of the Emery go-around, but that it fits the general band, if you will, of normal use at this point in time. So we're going to use proxies, right? Because we have to set the assessment now that's going to be in place for the next, 10 years, most likely. So we look at these objective criteria, and we have to separate out what we call the general benefit and push that to the side. That cannot be assessed, right? So that's going to have to come up through city contributions or passing the hat or bake sales or grants or whatever other funding sources the TMA can come up with. And that's going to be, you'll see when the reports are coming out here fairly soon, that's based on objective criteria. One of those things that we've been using is GIS to see how many properties outside of Emeryville and therefore not accessible by the city council of Emeryville are within that same distance. So in Oakland, right across the street, those are going to have to be general benefit for better or worse. And then looking at how many trips there are probably few, but of people that are literally ride BART on the Emery go-around to go out and take a walk on the waterfront and then go right back and never touch a business or a residence while they're in, Emeryville. There's not a huge amount, but that's going to be a number. In the past, you could sort of use these de minimis rules and just estimate it's 1% or 3% or something. That's no longer the case. We have to really quantify that and go through a lot of exercise. Again, we're using GIS tools and other types of things so that we can come up with something that mathematically makes sense.
And maybe I'll just say that the reason that it's not really an actual use, because one, that can change. Like I'll use an office building, let's say. You could have an office building that, because of the mix of workers and where they live, no one uses the Emery around. 6 months later, that tenant leaves, a new tenant comes in, or maybe it's the same tenant, but another group of workers. This time, they all live near Bark, so they're all using the Emery around, right? And so the access to the service is the same for that building, whether there's a tenant there that no one is using it, or if there's a tenant there that everyone's using it, the ability to use the shuttle is the same. And so, for example, under the P-bid, you pay whether your building is tenanted or not as soon as you get that occupancy, because you can't really judge, whether or not occupancy is high. You can't just fine-grain it that much. You would be continually trying to determine that. So it's really based upon access to the service, whether you use it or not. And the feeling is that its access is fair because you still have that special benefit whether you use it or not. Your property value is still getting that special benefit whether you use it or not. And so that is an objective way, as opposed to it's much more difficult if it was like a use space.
Okay, this is a quick follow-up to you. When will that report be done, and will it be published publicly?
It will be done soon, and we'll have it out within probably 3 weeks.
Microphone.
Yes.
It will be out before the May 7th study session.
Yeah, it'll be out soon, and it will absolutely be public. Yes. There's no, it's completely transparent.
Okay, just first a procedural comment. I don't think there was a whole lot of publicity for this meeting. I hope there's some more publicity for this coming Saturday's meeting so that people know about it. I mean, we've got a few people here. There's an awfully lot more people that are going to be affected by this, and I'm sure that if more people knew about it, there'd probably be more people here. And also, is this being recorded and it's going to be shown on the TV? Okay.
It's being shown on ETV right now, and it'll also be shown on the city's YouTube station. And we will also we'll be doing this as a road show as well. So the idea is not that everyone who's interested needs to come here, but we will be going out and talking, and I think there'll be a lot.
It's going to basically be the same presentation that we're hearing tonight.
Well, but as we have more information, more information.
One of the other things I was thinking of is you might want to have someone from the TMA here as well as from the city, because they're very much involved in some of these decisions that have to be made and will affect very much how this P-bid is going to operate. And
define the budget.
Yeah, define the budget, define the service. So that's very important information. A couple of comments on, or comments on the actual process. Is the current ridership being taken into account in terms of where people get on, where people get off in determining the assessments? And the other question, or more of a comment than a question, or combination, is there is the problem of the general benefit as opposed to the special benefit, which are people you cannot assess, and it strikes me that there is a possible way around that, and that would be to have if you live in Emeryville and are in the assessment district, you get a little card. You get on the bus, you show them a card. That's it. If you don't live in Emeryville and don't have a card, then you have to, before you get on, you have to purchase a ticket for maybe 15 cents, 20 cents from a little vending machine, which they already do for parking. I was just up in Eugene, and they do that for the bus system there. It makes it pretty quick, and that way you don't end up doubly charging people.
Yeah, on that latter question, that's certainly a policy. It's kind of like the fare question that was brought up earlier, and it is a fair question, obviously, but that's a TMA really, you know, to your point, would need to answer that. I don't know if Karen wants to comment. But on the first question, we absolutely look at the route map. We look at what's going on. Ridership. Low.
Hopefully. Maybe the battery went dead.
Probably your batteries went out.
Yeah.
Give that to you. Thanks. You can pick that up?
Yep.
Okay, let's try this. Can't move too far now. That's good, probably. So we definitely looked at that, and we're using that in the GIS I was talking about, the analysis of it. To Karen's point, though, we're not getting too tied up on who's riding today versus who's riding tomorrow, right? But we're very much looking at where the routes are, and are they serving the entire city? You know, we obviously don't want to have a broad swath of the city that's not served, and we're not going to assess them, obviously. So we're using that, but we're not overusing it, if I can say that. I guess we're going to have to wander around.
Yeah, I had a question. I attend a lot of public meetings, and it occurs to me that if the Emeryville was considered a public system, which is what it really is, we would be eligible for a lot of federal and state money. Today I was at a meeting in BART and LAPTA, and AC Transit were awarded considerable money at the sales tax meeting. So one of the reasons that you may not be able to get sales tax money is because it's not a public system. So what would be the benefit of having a public system as opposed to trying to say that it's private? Yeah.
I think I'm going to have to punt that to one of you.
Let me give it back to Jim. Okay.
Need more double A's.
Yeah, I think those double A's might be dead too.
20th century problem here.
Yes, really, 20th century problem. What was the question?
Federal.
Oh, federal, yes. Well, I will say this. To date, there has been a real resistance to being classified as a transit system because you may have access to federal money, but you have access, then you also have the obligation of adhering to a whole slew of federal regulations. And I mean, it's just that, it's one of the reasons, like, small cities don't even want federal money for contracts because the oversight and administration is huge unless it's a whole lot of money. Well, once you're a transit operator, you are subject to the Federal Transportation Administration. There's it's the cost of being a public transit agency, and then have to hopefully get your share of what is available, is not something that right now that is within the city's capacity to do. I mean, you would need like a whole division that would run the system and comply with the federal transit administrative guidelines. So up to date, it has been considered that it overshadows any benefit.
There was a one, yeah.
Robin.
Yeah, this isn't working still.
Still.
All right, sorry.
I think the battery's died.
Not working? Yeah. With all these batteries, none of them work.
Robin Orden, I live in Emery Bay Village, and I've lived in Emeryville since 1991, and I've been riding the Emery-Go-Round since it began because we were fortunate to be in proximity to one of the business stops on 53rd and Hollis. And what I would like to promote is part of the process that we're entering is to and this has been said by some people already, is look at what can be offered for, we had some more routes on weekends. I don't know what the cause was for them being cut, but having something that runs on Hollis and in that area on a weekend to other parts of the city, or even during the week to other parts, so we could stay within the city and benefit the businesses by being able to get on the bus and get down to Trader Joe's or to other shopping areas without routing through MacArthur BART to do that. And the same thing on the weekend, to be able to get from the heart of Emeryville in our area without, it's not convenient to walk to 40th Street or walk to Powell. I'm not even sure where the closest stop would be at the Powell area, to go to BART if we wanted to get BART to go to the city.
I mean, I'm not even bringing up the West Oakland since AC Transit hatcheted the 19. I've been sobbing on that one. But I think that having some development where we return routes that are beneficial to the city's businesses and the residents for access and convenience makes a big difference.
Yeah, I would say that probably adding stops does add some time, but it's the easiest thing to do is to add stops. When you're talking about new routes, that obviously is a little bit more, but I would welcome suggestions that I will pass on to the TMA, and certainly there's nothing preventing looking at what, kind of, I would say, the most requested route revisions that would benefit residents would be, and having that be something that they do at least one budget scenario of what that would look like. I think, so if you could email me with, kind of what, or any of you would like to email me with, what would you like to see different in terms of routes or schedules or stops? That stops are probably the easiest. I mean, they don't necessarily take a lot to add stops, but when you're talking about whole routes, I think if we can get that information and we can budget it out, it might be something, when you're deciding what the assessment is, part of the assessment is what the budget is. And so I think that there's things that the residents would like as part of being part of the P-bid, then that definitely is something that I know I would be very interested in seeing added to the mix.
And just to follow up, I mean, that is a significant change from where we are today, which is that, the specific benefit, the assessment has not been paid for by the residents for the most part. So, I mean, that is the positive, if you want to look at a positive, looking at assessing this citywide, that there would be more representation in the routes. So, do you want to?
This way? Yeah. Yes. Oh, let me. I know. I'm so.
Is that one live?
And then you can lean or sit.
I just have a kind of a procedural question. You mentioned that there were 90 people got on at BART and got off at 40th Street. How do you know there were 99 people that got onto the bus that went into the city?
Oh,
I mean, how do you know that?
I know because we just did a ridership survey in January, and one of the things that struck me was, well, they had said that they felt that 5% of the people riding the shuttle were pass through. They didn't start. The question was, where does your trip start and where does your trip end?
And you did that for everybody that got on that day?
I think it was a survey. Not everyone replied, but we used a company that does surveys, and so I think it was something like 60-some%. I think returned the survey off the top of my. It was. I'll put it this way: it was enough of a return that we have a fair amount of confidence in the numbers. And so once I heard that, I go, well, where are these folks going? So one of the questions we had asked, because we knew that there were some questions about West Berkeley Bowl, 40th and San Pablo, I think it was Amtrak, and the MacArthur BART, because those are the four most likely stops for those kinds of trips. So they were able to determine, oh yeah, when I asked, yeah, there were 88 people a day that were getting on in MacArthur, who said that their trip doesn't start or finish in Emeryville. And we correlated, as I said, I've asked for more slicing and dicing, so one of the extra slicing and dicing was to correlate those trips that didn't start or finish in Emeryville with getting on or off one of those four stops.
So that's how you got a percentage, was taking those numbers and then putting that up against the total amount of people that ran?
It was the percentage was 5%. The number of 88 was 88 actual trips.
Right, but you don't know how many people were on the bus that day.
Yeah, I do.
What that 88 bounced against? I mean,
No. This was just 88 people who got on the BART at MacArthur and got off on 40th and San Pablo every day. That there's about 90 people a day who do that.
And you did that once, or do you do it once a week or once a month?
This was done, I think the survey was 2 days during the week and a Saturday.
Just for one
It was a
week.
sample. It was not, it was a survey designed to get enough response, and so the surveyors felt that there was a scientific validity to their conclusions.
Okay. All right. That's all I wanted.
Yeah. Yes. Because they even weighted thing. I mean, they did that will, once it's final, that will be public too if you want to see it.
I want to just piggyback for a second on what you said, what you're just talking about. In terms of getting money from the county, that kind of regional use will be of benefit to us. It won't hurt us.
Yes.
It will help us. I would like to pick up on, I guess Rob isn't here, but what he started to raise, which is residents are now paying a transfer tax. Granted, that's not, you know, a weekly or yearly thing, but they are now paying half-a-cent sales tax into the county in order to get money, more money for transportation. And then we are talking about raising the minimum wage, which will have a direct impact on some of us and will definitely increase what we're paying weekly, monthly, annually in a variety of ways, but at Watergate it'll raise our dues. And so we're getting boom, 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 boom. You know, more money for this, more money for that. And now we add the P-bid, which people look at that and say, $130 of my sales tax. They're not saying $10 a month or $11 a month. I mean, not on sales tax, but on my property tax. They're saying, look at this big item that's being added. So I think I'd like to see us really think about something that somebody mentioned, which is if we are going to ask residents for another increase, which will be in a little over a year's time, or approximately 1 year's time. We've had 4 different kinds of things that represent increases that we've been hit with. We need to also say to them how they're going to get a day-to-day benefit, not just the legal or general benefit that you talk about, which is access, which I understand, and that helps your property values. But there's going to have to be some way to really persuade residents that they want another increase.
I think that was more of a comment, so does anyone else have any question? Well,
remind them of the next meeting.
Yes, I am. So we're going to have another community meeting on this plan for March 21st. It really was designed to give people both a weekday as well as a weekend day to come. You know, some people it works more right after on a weeknight and some on a weekday. The e-news that goes out, we did a special e-news about this meeting, and the regular e-news that goes out tomorrow will talk about the community meeting on the 21st. It will also be said again reminded again at the council meeting, and we also have it on our website page. And if Twitter is up, no, it won't be up until the week after. We are starting a new Twitter, I know. So you can sign up and get tweets from the city about stuff like this. I know. But yeah, I will say that cities are struggling with, how do we, finding better ways of outreaching to a community. And I mean, even something like a website that, for me was like kind of cutting edge, just putting it on the website. My sons are like 19, early 20s. They're like, I don't look at a website, it's too much information. So anyway, so that will be the next one. And I hope, and I should have the ridership data finalized by then is the plan. I think Tim will probably still be working on the assessment stuff. But as I said, that as we get in by May, we will probably have a draft management plan, or certainly the guts of that plan in terms of the assessment part will be worked out. We might still be working with governance because, as I said, that's going. Part of this is going to be an iterative process. Not all of it's cut and dried and objective. Governance certainly is not. And these are the kinds of things, in addition to finding out more about what residents would like kind of added to the shuttle as part of, them now having representation, both monetarily and also, a voice, what's the best way to govern. I mean, obviously the way that it has been governed now, there have been some businesses who feel that they're not as well represented as they could be, and certainly residents have not had an official voice. Yes.
I just want to tell you that I retweeted Rob's article today, so it's in the hashtag Emeryville.
Thank you.
As much as I can do.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much for coming. I actually was not expecting as many people. Thank you.
And all, yeah.